Davyd. Hello. Lovely to be here with you on this run up to the autumn equinox, which is happening on Saturday for us here in the UK and on the 23rd, 8 a.m. in the morning, I think. And for you, you are in Mexico.
I am right now. That's very true. It's great to be chatting with you again, Rebecca. After a while, we haven't done one of our food as medicine shows for a little while now. I think we've been so deep in our own medicine worlds.
We have
And
been very
really,
deep.
yeah,
Yeah.
I know that we've been running some various cleanses and are in the middle of one right now. We've just finished a couple of immersions recently, working with some of the energies maybe that are prevalent in our world right now. But it's really great to be having a conversation with you again in this run up to the Libra Equinox on the 23rd of September. So
Indeed,
I
it
think we're
is.
going to be having our equinox at about 1 o'clock in the morning here in Mexico on that, because we're a little bit behind you guys.
You are. Yeah, so just to introduce this equinox talk. So I'm running the Advanced Love Your Liver cleanse group at the moment. We're into the sort of latter stages now. And we just wanted to take this opportunity within the group to really speak in a little bit more depth about this equinox and what's happening, because it's such a poignant time, and no better man to inform us all about what's happening from all different sorts of dimensions when it comes to these specific timelines that we're on. I know that you've done a recent video with Pam Gregory around the equinox, but I wanted to make this a little bit more focused around, the cleansing journey, particularly that we're on at the moment, weaving in how powerful it is to be using food at a time like this, running up to the equinox, and also weaving in the plants, because I know obviously that's your specialty amongst many other things. So maybe you can just give us a little bit of an overview as to what is happening in your world at the moment and how you see this particular time that we're at right now in the run up to this weekend.
Well, thank you very much for that. I would say slightly a generous appraisal of my astrological abilities. I mean, I have to say that I'm not really an astrologer, but I do have, I think, a bit of a tantum ability for reading pictures and correspondences and energetic flow, and that's why I love doing the videos with Pam and also with Kelly Hunter too on the Moons of Mythos. I let the astrologers pull out the really important pieces of what's coming up, and then I try to interpret it through my ability to access the quantum space and also the astral space. So we're talking about the fourth dimensional human emotional realm, where lots of our traumas are stored in that energetic space, but also the higher mind, eagle's perch, non-dual, unconditional love realm of the goddess, which is the fifth dimension. And that's really been helped for me by working with certain plants, many of which we've talked about before. But and also I think if we look back to sort of just over 12 months ago, one of the most important plants to work with is dandelion, because dandelion is really the plant that I would say is the architect of how to live and be in the fifth dimensional sense at all times. And that wonderful plant, or that powerful being, is really a being of the fifth dimension, because he brings us into the place of being in the present moment. And his abilities to show the past, present, and future are all one brings us into a place where we can see that unfolding in each and every moment. So the trick to that is really to be present with yourself, which is much easier if you've done a cleanse or a detox, either through the body like you're doing with your group right now, or whether you've done an energetic cleanse, perhaps even a parasite cleanse, working with plants like Artemisia absinthium, with wormwood, or any of the other Artemisias, which is why we laid out, or I can't say that me and Bella did it really, but it was given to us by the plants, the pathway that we've laid out through quantum plant healing, which you very much contributed to on a number of the immersions, particularly I think the Artemisias, dandelion, and elder, because those are powerful cleansing plants that we need to work with. And so I would say, as a preface to the Libra equinox energy of the 23rd, which is really a point the same as the spring equinox in the northern hemisphere, which is the balancing of the light and dark. It's a point where light and dark are in perfect balance and harmony, only at 2 points in the year. And after that, after this Libra equinox on September the 23rd, we start to nosedive, you can say, very quickly into the darkness, which in Britain particularly comes to a peak at winter solstice. Now, we shouldn't be afraid of the dark. In fact, as a Scorpio, we say the darkness is our friend. Why is that? Well, the darkness is the place that needs to be illuminated. It can be our shadow space, but we can also think of it as being our creative space, the womb space. And so in order to be able to manifest the higher dimensional blueprint that our higher selves, our fifth, sixth, seventh dimensional selves hold for us down here into the 3D world, into this physicality, we need to cleanse. I think that's why we've always worked together so much over the last few years. We both understand the need for physical cleansing, energetic cleansing, and even on some level, emotional, spiritual cleansing. Because in order to make that jump to a much more fully conscious, multi-dimensional being in 3D, we need to clean. We need to clean and remove the things that no longer serve us.
Absolutely. Yeah. So there's sort of so much in there. I mean, just going back to the immersions to start with, the sort of, I mean, I participated in each of those immersions, and it was so beautiful to watch the progression from one plant to the next, and then to be doing that in conjunction with, you know, I mean, I'm always tinkering around with my own cleansing work in the background, so to be combining that with deeper food cleansing was unbelievably powerful. So yes, I mean, the plants play such a big role in all of this, and I always find somehow there seems to be this sort of separation between the plants and the food that they are, but the plants are the food, if that makes sense, as well. So dandelion, elder, you know, the artemisias, for example, these are plants that we can also eat and enjoy. And when we use them in the context of a cleansing journey, for example, they are working with us on all levels, you know. But all the foods are, if we know how to tune into them in this way. You know, that's one of the reasons why celery juice is so powerful, is because it's doing very, very specific things. And when we can tune into the energy of these foods, they are working in very magical ways on each level of our being. So the cleansing journey is not only important from a physical perspective, it's critical for our, you know, our emotional, mental, spiritual evolution as beings, and especially at a time like this, because we're living at a time in the world where we are flooded with toxicity in all sorts of various forms.
Right. Beautifully said, Becca, and I couldn't agree more. You know, we are living at a time when the toxicity is really, really high, but we're also living at a time when we have more access now to the quantum information that you've just shared. And, you know, sometimes we can think of plants like celery, or, you know, any plant that we put in our salad, or any of these wonderful plants, as we think of them as only food.
Yeah.
But if you sort of just gently switch over to our world of quantum plant healing, we see the plants as medicine, which is why we came up with food as medicine, because whether it's celery or whether it's elder, they're both plants, and we're putting both of them into our body, and they both have quantum aspects to them that can talk to our physical body, our spiritual body, and our emotional body, and communicate, sometimes even bypassing the lower mind, or the monkey mind, the much more left brain hemisphere, which is about the sort of more organizational 3D things. And as the wonderful brother Pete Jackson Main shared, and I've said many times before, but when we're dealing with a plant like elder, the Sambucus nigra tree, we are dealing with a being that can talk to our fields without our brain getting involved at all, and say, hey, what's up with Davyd right now? What does Davyd need? Davyd really needs to purge something out of his system right now. He's got a whole lot of stuff in his field he doesn't want. So, okay, let's make him vomit, or let's make him use the lower pathway. Or maybe nothing happens to us. Maybe we don't vomit or purge, and Elder doesn't need anything to come up. Maybe we just need a boost to our immune system. So she's going to work on that. But as Pete beautifully shared, you know, this plant is an immunoneuromodulator. Definitely a mouthful, but actually is a really, really cool example of how quantum plant intelligence works, because it speaks directly to all of the other beings that are in the field that make up all of our organs and our systems. And for me, that is one of the most mind-blowing pieces of information that I've received, I think, in the last few years, because it kind of, to me, sums up everything that I already knew about quantum plant intelligence, but how it works here in 3D. And once we can accept that a spiritual intelligence like the elder tree can do that and talk without me having to get involved, I'm like, wow, that's a perfectly tailored, unique healthcare system that is tailoring to me specifically. Nobody else has to get involved.
Absolutely. But what's so interesting is that all the plant foods can do this in one way or another. So most of the plant foods that we're eating are adaptogens, but we don't see them as adaptogens. We think of the adaptogens as, you know, the more commonly known adaptogens would be things like reishi or ashwagandha, for example. Not always plants from our own land, you know, but actually we have all of these beautiful plants that are talking to our systems in ways that don't require our brain to be involved. If you sit under an apple tree and you eat the apples from that tree, that apple is getting right in and working into your body, into your field in very, very magical ways. It just requires us to start noticing and observing and talking to these plants, you know. And I mean, I think you and I have covered in a talk before, we were discussing the mineral salts that you know are mineral salts that are in fruits and vegetables and plants in general. These mineral salts are what connect us to source. They are a direct connection to source. And when they enter the bloodstream, they through the soul, they connect with the planet, you know, the planets beyond, the stars, the moon, and they become activated with a different kind of intelligence, and they are shown where they need to go through this very direct connection, which I just think it's mind-blowingly beautiful, you know. It's mind-blowing. Yeah.
So you tend to look at them through the filter of plants like celery and spinach and all of these other wonderful medicinal plants, and I tend to perhaps look at them more through the sort of typical herbal world that me and Pete would discuss. But in essence, we're talking about the same magic, the same quantum ability, whether it's celery, whether it's elder. And as you just said, you know, so many plants really are adaptogens. We know that nettle is an adaptogen. We know that basil is an adaptogen. But Pete's also suggested angelica is an adaptogen.
Yeah.
Dandelion is an adaptogen. Why? Because these plants have the capacity to communicate with us and have a direct conversation without Davyd's brain getting involved at all. And the same thing when we put these trace minerals into our body with these other wonderful medicine plants that you share, because they are our connection to our divine self.
Absolutely.
And not that we have this journey where we start off as a 3D being and suddenly we get to be a 4D being, and then we get to be a 5D. It's like, no, we are already all of those things, and we always have been. But what these plants and these elements and these plants are doing is allowing us to become more consciously connected to those aspects of ourselves, to become more consciously aware of our emotional triggers. That's 4D, that's the human emotional realm, that's the astral planes. That's also the place where we can be manipulated or we can be targeted to believe certain things that perhaps don't serve us. So this is really where I see the work that you do and that we do at QPH is sort of conjoining, which is like, how do we cleanse out the things that don't serve us, where we can be in some ways coerced or manipulated, or however we want to see that, you know, into a we become very aligned and coherent and clear about what is my truth. That's the only thing that's important in the end. It's about truth for me. We can watch the unfolding narratives on the TV and laugh at it sometimes, be horrified by it other times, but from a more cosmically connected place, in a sort of more 560 7th-dimensional place, we can observe all of this, and we can observe our emotional selves being triggered. That's really, really a cool piece of kit that we've got there, because when we can see ourselves being emotionally triggered, we can see the place that we need to still do work so that we can become more cosmically connected. Because if we're getting triggered by pretty much everything, that tells us that we've still got a fair amount of work to do, which is where doing detoxes, parasite cleanses, inner work is absolutely essential. It's
absolutely essential, and it helps to create that separation. It helps us to be on the eagle's perch, and that's not always coined from your terminology. I'm adopting there. Sitting on the eagle's perch. I love that one, and it's so true. You know, and the cleansing journey really helps us to be on the eagle's perch, which is not always an easy place to be, because it requires us to look a little bit deeper at the shadow parts that want to be revealed. And a cleansing journey will inevitably bring up that stuff. So we have to be willing to go there with it. But I just want to touch a little bit, Davyd, on the sort of the light dark aspect of the equinox a little bit more, but also the masculine and feminine, because this is a time of the equinox is really a time of balancing. I see an alignment of balance, at this time of the year, at these 2 points of the year. And that means light and dark. It also means the inner masculine and feminine. So can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that what we were just talking about there is the preface to creating that balance within us. And, when we talk about light and dark, again, I'm going to keep referring to Eagle's Perch, because Eagle's Perch is the fifth dimensional perspective of non-duality. So when we're in the 3D body, 3D and 4D are always linked. And maybe some of these terms are a little new for some people, but they're really good to try and get your head around, because they're a map of ourselves that is always there. And it's about how much conscious awareness we can give to this. So when we can see from the Eagle's Perch, if we can sort of separate out ourselves and observe, take some meditation time to sit and observe and say, hey, this situation happened for me this afternoon with these people or this thing. What actually happened for me there? Rather than still being in the emotional triggering of being angry or upset, take some deep breaths, go and sit under a beautiful tree and ask your higher self to take you to that Eagle's Perch and observe. You can even retro journey back into the moment and observe what actually happened there for me. Well, this person said that and it absolutely triggered the hell out of me. Why is that? Well, you choose to allow whether to be triggered or not, right? But if you're out of balance in yourself, the triggering is much more likely to happen. If you're in balance, you can say, well, that's all right, buddy, you can say that to me, but I'm not really affected by that, because that's your stuff that you're giving to me, and I'm not going to receive that anymore. That's up to you to keep. Or I can say, oh my God, I'm going to absorb all of this and get triggered to hell out of it, and then be out of shape for the rest of the day, the rest of the week, the rest of the month. My choice. So this is the balancing piece comes in. And I think, that Libra is the sign in the zodiac of balance. This is a point where light and dark balance. And, again, I would like to suggest, it's kind of in all of the wisdom traditions, that the more light that we wish to hold, if you wish to hold angelic light consciously and work with it, we have to be able to hold the equal amount of dark. There is no way around that, everybody. If you want to hold a lot of light, you have to be prepared to be able to hold a lot of dark. Now, the thing, whether you act on what is in the dark. So you could have the capacity for absolute destruction. You could destroy everything around you if you want. And as a Scorpio, I know quite a bit about this. But you can choose not to. You can observe, hey, in this moment, I could act with righteous indignation and fire back and do a typical Scorpio, sting you with my tail. Or I can say, I think I'm a little bit better than that these days. I've learned something on my journey. I can rise, because the Eagle's Perch, the eagle is the ascended aspect of Scorpio through the transfiguration of the phoenix rising from the flames. So what we're talking about here with equinox coming up is the entry point of balance into the Scorpio season, which is death and rebirth. Okay, and we must never be afraid of the Scorpio season, because it's our chance, as nature shows every year as the leaves start to fall from the tree, that nature has to reinvent itself through a death process to be reborn back in the spring, so the goddess can come back fully formed again. Now, in the fractal world that I think we certainly exist in, and I think probably most of our audience do too,
so can you just explain, Davyd, what you mean by the fractal world, just in case people don't understand that terminology?
Okay, so yeah, a good question. So the fractal organic world is where whatever I am doing with myself is naturally going to fractal out to affect the entirety of everything. That is why we say that the most rebellious, powerful thing that you can do is look after yourself. Because what you do is you change the vibration that is immediately closest to you. And by default, you are going to start affecting everything around you in the same way.
Beautiful.
If you're in a negative place or destructive place, you're going to pull in other people into that. So you're going to create that wider sense of destruction. Now, I'm sure most of us at some point have flip-flopped between those two energies. And if we can go to a more meditative Eagle's Perch perspective and sit honestly with ourselves, we don't have to share this with anybody, but if we can sit honestly with ourselves and review our actions, we can start to see how we get triggered, why. Then the question becomes, well, what is it that made me react to that? That's where you have to do your own investigation and say, oh my gosh, this feels like it links back to something that happened to me in childhood where that happened. That's how, using the Buddhist terminology, we go back to the root and say, that's where it is. So rather than using the Western medical approach, which is to put a sticky plaster of medication over the pain, hoping that it will go away, which it sort of does temporarily, but then resurfaces later with distortions in her physical body, we can energetically trace back and say, that's where this happened. Okay, I'm no longer in that space. I'm no longer in that place of pain with my family or whatever the situation is. I've resolved that. So you can see it then playing forwards into, but I'm still reacting in that moment. Why am I doing that? So this is where the balance piece needs to come in. We need to be able to sit in duality and just see it as a story that we are telling ourselves to experience how to be in 3D.
Yeah, beautiful. That's such a clear explanation, and I suppose that is precisely where the cleansing journey helps us, because it helps us to see those things with such clear precision, you know. And the more you walk this journey, the more you can reach those hard to reach places, if you like.
Right. And also in doing that, Bex, we also get, sorry, just to carry on, we also get into some really interesting places where we can do self-healing, which is by forgiving ourselves and not ourselves in the vibration of perceived mistakes that we made when we were 18 and maybe not so awake, or maybe even in our 20s when we were still not that awake, or any of those moments we look back and we can end up in a place of self-admonishment. Oh my God, like, why did I do that? I should have done this. It doesn't matter. That's one of the beautiful things about Dandelion, is that everything is always okay. It's always perfect, and it always happens for a reason, which is also part of the 5D flow. Once we let go of the need to control, which is a big part of Scorpio, and the need to manipulate things so that we get what we want. When we remove all of those things, because we can see from a place of trust and surrender that everything is always okay, it allows us to drop into the heart space and to flow forwards with that energy, and not try to consider, hey, I'm really going to be in the flow, but I'm just going to set up a little backdoor mechanism here, which if that flow doesn't work out, I've got another plan. That's not being in the flow. That's still being Scorpio trying to control things, but it's very slippery. And we have to be,
well, it comes from a place of fear as well, though, doesn't it?
Exactly.
You know, it's really it's the grip, you know, still gripping. So
releasing fear is really important. And I think that fear gets trapped in our bodies. It gets trapped by behavioral patterns, sometimes through, you know, comfort eating or addictions to certain substances, foods, alcohol, all of these. You know, we've been gifted, I would say, these addictions from other forces that want to keep us in a place of going around and keeping us in fear. Because if we're in a place of fear, we don't trust, and then we try to control, which is what Scorpio is all about. Can you break that spell really and say, I'm not in a place of fear. I do trust the divine flow of the universe. And even if sometimes it scares the hell out of me, I always trust that it's going to be okay, which is where we then come back to Dandelion.
Yeah, beautiful. I mean, it all weaves in so beautifully, doesn't it? You know, and the whole, you know, I'm sort of glad that you touched on the addictions piece, because this is something that I have spoken quite a bit about in the cleanse and also outside of the cleanse. But it's such you know, working with addictions requires so much self-honesty. It requires so much discernment, but also surrender. You know, it's really being willing to ride the journey of the addiction and in a way allow it to be the teacher in as much as anything else. And this is where, you know, food as the medicine and food as the guide, it you know, it can be the nemesis, but it can also be the greatest teacher. And that's really been my experience of it, is that, you know, I've had a very, very tough journey with food in all sorts of various different ways throughout my life. And actually, it wasn't really until more recently that I was able to see that it has been my greatest tool and my greatest teacher. I feel that it was a tool that was gifted to me by the universe to work my process, literally. You know, and so it can help you navigate these streams. And addictions are just showing you areas in your life that need you to look at them. You know, they need your support. So it's just very interesting how you've weaved that in.
I think, well, just to add to what you're saying, I think you just said something really important, which is that these pain patterns or these addictions, or many other things, they are our greatest teachers. And actually the people that give us the most amount of grief in our life, often family members or work colleagues or whatever, these are our greatest teachers. And this is, again, the 5D perspective, where rather than saying, hey, that person's good and that person's bad, which is a purely subjective experience, right? You know, I remember in my Buddhist school teachings, thinking, well, how come the person who's your worst enemy is also the best friend of somebody else? Are they worst enemy or best friend? Well, when you think about it like that, that's purely a perspective issue, right? And so it can't be that somebody is just everybody's worst enemy and somebody's everybody's best friend. That's simply not true, which is how we can start to look at it and say, well, how come that person is my worst enemy, but somebody else loves them to the point where they're best friend? What am I missing here? Am I framing this person into being my nemesis? You know, and so we can play with these meditations a lot and start to break down our own reactions in situations to other people. And that doesn't mean that we have to go out there and like everybody instantly. There are probably some people out there who we just don't resonate with. And that's the beauty of the more non-dual perspective, is that we can observe somebody in their own patterns and say, that doesn't resonate with me, but hey sister, hey brother, from a 5D place, I still have unconditional love for you, because I see the journey that you're still in with your projections, with your behavior, with your pain patterns. And maybe we're in that place ourselves. Maybe we've already worked through that, when we can identify and say, hey brother, I really get your addiction issues. I was there 10 years ago in that space, and this is how I work through it. And or we don't have a comment, we can just say, hey, I'm watching this person exhibit their pain, and just identify with it and just see it from a distance. So, you know, we don't have to get involved in people's stuff. And I think that that's also really important at this point, that on the journey that we're on, being sovereign really is a lot about being, as we say, self-centered, staying centered in oneself. This is really, really important. And I've emphasized in this a lot, and not just with you, but on all the podcasts I'm doing at the moment, because we have to get past this idea that being selfish, which is something we're told is really, really bad. If we just reframe that slightly to being centered in self, which means that I can be the best that I can be for everybody around me and the world in general, by making sure that I am a balanced, the Libra energy, coherent, centered, aligned being, no longer carrying the baggages and burdens of the things that no longer serve me, whether they're the physical toxins in the body, the mental toxins, the energetic toxins. And like you said, we're living in a world where we are being bombarded, let's just say that. There are other words I could use, but I don't want us to get into trouble. That we are being bombarded by introduced toxins that are directly affecting our immune system, which directly affects our sense of happiness, our sense of well-being, and all of these things. If we're constantly trying to fight things that are attacking our immune system, we're not giving ourselves enough time to be the best that we can be. So we're fighting fires rather than being creative. And that is a big part of what this whole unfolding is about. Can we come back into our hearts, maintain control of our actions, our words, even our thoughts, and bring them into a clean, clear, coherent place? Well, if our bodies are polluted with toxins and addictive habits, all of which somehow are manifesting, because our body really is the end of the railway line. Whatever is manifesting in the mirror in front of us is showing us, you know, whether we're carrying too much weight, whether we've lost weight, whether we've got varicose veins, whether we've got missing teeth. I just had to have a tooth pulled out. And when I checked to see in the biodecoding which particular energy was connected to, was absolutely pertinent to something that was going on to me. And so we can understand that things going on in our body are the reflection of what is going on at our energetic soul level. Absolutely. This piece is the picture of what is going on at the soul level.
Key. This part is key. And you know, I say this over and over again, that our symptoms are not a set of problems just to be fixed. They are a process that you're in with the divine, that are helping you to expand to the next level. So if we can start to be almost in, work with our symptoms in this way, almost as a co-creation, then it takes the weight of having to fire in at 100 miles an hour with this protocol and this protocol and doing this and doing this. And of course, we have to support the body in every way possible, but we also have to see the teachings of the symptoms, because they're precious, each and every one of them. You know, it's like each one is nuggets of gold, you know.
I love that, Becca. That's so true. And, you know, I've often put this into the framework of investigating the mystery of ourselves. And the more start to view ourselves as some sort of Sherlock Holmes case that needs to be solved, the more that we can ease into these processes and see them more as an investigative process to become more, or to remember who we are, and less about something I need to get rid of because it's bothering me. It's like, well, the things you need to get rid of are there for a reason in the first place. The question is why.
Absolutely.
And I think
That's it, exactly.
much more experiential, much more interesting. Sure, it can be painful, but you know, in the age that we live in, particularly working with these quantum plant intelligences, but also with really clear, coherent intentions and prayer setting, we live in an accelerated moment where quantum manifestation can happen like that.
Yeah.
And you know, we've been talking about this a lot over the last few days, myself and Bella, my partner in this work, and we're just like, you know, I often hear people saying, things never happen that quickly, Dahi. They take years to change, etc., etc. I'm like, I simply do not agree with that, because at a quantum level, a change can happen momentarily, and in that moment, your perspective on something can change utterly from being a place of victim
in a split second. Yeah.
In a split second, because it's quantum, and if we hold that possibility for ourselves, so if I really want to, I can, then we will.
Yeah. And this is where working with the plants is so precious, you know, for me with these things. I mean, I have my closest allies, you know, dandelion, nettle, rose. These are really my sort of core team, and they really help with this, you know. They really help to allow me to be in that space of shifting quickly where I need to, or getting me out of a mindset, or just calling in these beings, you know. And we can all work with them in this way. It's you know, we can all choose to work with the plants in this way, and they will step in if we really give them the attention and speak to them, talk to them as if they are beings, which they are. Then this is what invites them into the field, you know. So this is something that I wanted to really share with the group, is that we all have the capacity to work with plants and angels and all the different beings. We have this capacity to work with them. It's just about opening to that and inviting them in.
It really is. That's such an important point, Beckham. I just want to amplify that the angels, the plants, all of these high dimensional beings, they will come into our field. And this is where I often differentiate with clients between those beings that are here for our benefit and those ones that aren't. The ones that aren't come into our field without our invitation, often even without our knowledge. The ones here to assist us, particularly the off-planet extraterrestrial beings, some people might call them, which we can include angels as a part of. They're just other dimensional frequencies that we somehow call this and that. But if we want to work with angelic energy, we have to call them in, invite them. So I invite in the most appropriate higher dimensional qualities of the angels to assist me. I call in the most appropriate aspects of my ancestors or the plants. And if we put it into that context of the most appropriate energy, we always get exactly what we need. So a lot of this is about clarity of thought, and what are we doing? Are we making a prayer for ourselves while we're cooking a dinner, watching television and writing a note to somebody? Or are we fully going, this is really what I want for myself. I want to be participating consciously and fully.
Yeah, absolutely. Lighting a candle, taking the time. It doesn't have to be long, but just that intention of sitting and, you know, and calling it in a very, very intentional and direct way is what opens that space. So Davyd, just to kind of bring this together, I just want to touch on the sort of the sort of sovereign aspect of this equinox, because I feel that it's really calling us to step into our sovereign, to be in our power, to reclaim our light in a very, the energy around that feels very strong. You know, people are really being asked now to let go of those old ways that are not serving, and to really, really reclaim your power. What is it that you're here to do? Who are you, and what are you here to do? And in what way do you wish to shine in the world? And that doesn't mean that you have to be enormous and big and out there. We can shine in all sorts of different ways. You know, you can be a full-time mother at home and shine the most beautiful light around your home, the people in your community, your family. So there's all sorts of ways in which we can take our power forward and contribute it to the world. I just wonder if you have anything to say around that.
Yeah, thank you, Beck. I think that's a really, really important point. And this whole journey, the so-called ascension process, how we want to view it, really is about becoming sovereign. And, you know, that's an idea that many people have talked about, but maybe don't really fully understand. And for humanity to get its freedom is actually something that we've never experienced, really, most of us. And so when we do get the freedom, and I've shared this before in some of my other podcasts, is I had a vision of humanity being freed. I mean, you can understand this vision in different ways, but understanding that humanity is somewhat a slave species on this planet with other beings not from this planet holding us in that space. This is how the vision unfolded. But I saw that those prisons that humanity being kept in to do the bidding of whoever, the doors were open. We could leave. And I looked around the particular cell in the vision that I was in. I was like, hey, everyone, we can go now. The slave masters have left us, are not here. People looked around and said, yeah, but I don't know what's outside of the gate, buddy. I don't think I want to go there. It doesn't look safe. I'd rather be in here as the slave. So it was a really profound vision, and we can understand it in different ways, depending on where we're at in the journey. But I think that it's a really important point because we don't know what freedom is, and freedom is letting go of mummy and daddy's purse strings, leaving home, mum's cooking, you know, dad's roof over our head. And so when we're 18 or whatever age we leave home, we have to leave the security and comfort that the parents give us. Well, the parents really in this situation are the system, but we're now realizing, many of us, that the system doesn't really serve us and was never set up to serve us. It was designed to serve somebody else. And that is a big part of the unfolding of becoming sovereign, is realizing, first of all, that that's going on. And secondly, then subscribing to the idea that I don't think I want to be part of that. I want my own freedom. But when you take your own freedom and become sovereign, it means that you are becoming 100% conscious and aware and responsible, as the Buddhists would say, for every thought, words and actions that you do. And for most people, that's super scary because they don't actually want to take responsibility for their actions. It's easy to blame somebody else and say, hey, you did this, or you told me to do that. Well, sure, I told you to do that, but you didn't have to do it. If someone told you to jump off a cliff because they think it's a great idea, does that mean you do it? No. That's where you have to practice discernment. But if we are contaminated and haven't done our detaxes, we might believe that person, say, really, you think jumping off a cliff is going to be the next best thing? Sure, buddy, give it a go. We might find a few minutes later that it wasn't such a great idea. And why did halfway down, we're probably thinking, I don't think I should have done this. That's where we have to do the cleaning. And I'm using some kind of silly analogies, but the point is still the same, that if we want to become sovereign, we have to become balanced in ourselves with the masculine, feminine energies, balancing our light and dark. And really the yin yang symbol is the most profoundly perfect representation of duality. And we have to harness both sides. We have to be able to hold the darkness within, but surrounded by light. But we also have to be the light within, being surrounded by the darkness. And of course, anyone jungle medicine, as I know that we both have, we have to sometimes go into a very, very dark space and be the light in our own darkness and say, hey, you can show me all of these things about myself that seem super dark and maybe have happened to me or I've participated in, but at my core, I'm still light. And if I can remember that light within, I can radiate that light out into the darkness of the shadows, into the womb space of creation. And if we do that properly, we might find hiding in our womb space, whether we're masculine or feminine, male or female, we both have that creative womb space to manifest. That's winter. That's the void. That's going into the complete darkness. But in that darkness comes the spark of fire and creation, which is what happens when masculine, feminine, in perfect harmony can join. A baby can be born, but also an idea or a project can be born too. It doesn't always have to be about bringing a newborn. It could be a newborn energy. So that's where these energies have to be balanced out, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. That's beautiful, and it's amazing to hear about your vision. And I was just thinking in terms of, you know, the womb space and being able to hold that light for ourselves. That requires us to feel very at home and very safe in the body. And in order to feel very at home and very safe in the body, working with food is a beautiful way. It's such a tangible way. So for people who disassociate very easily, people who've been through a lot of trauma, food is an incredibly tangible means to bring you back into the body, to root yourself, to bring you into that, into your womb space, so that you feel safe enough to be able to hold that light for yourself. And that is in itself a process.
It is. So just to kind of bring that to a place of culmination, I guess, as we come closer to the end of this, I want to just try and put this all into the context of what you originally asked me to talk about, which was about the importance of the equinox and the balance. And so if we view ourselves as the yin yang, we can keep asking ourselves, how much darkness am I able to hold? Can I hold the equal amount of light from the opposite side of the symbol, and recognize that I can hold darkness? I have the capacity to be a dark, evil person. I mean, I think we should also separate dark and evil out, because darkness is just absence of light. Evil is more of a frequency, the ones that operate through the darkness. But if we can be comfortable in the void, in the place of complete, blackness, but also understand that maybe at previous points in our life, we've been afraid to go into that space because of the monsters, maybe that were hiding in the darkness. But if we've done all of that cleansing, detoxing, inner work, we can sit in the darkness completely unafraid, because we know that there are no monsters in that space, because we've done our shadow work. And so if we were on the light in that womb space, just even temporarily, oh my gosh, it's nice and clean and clear, I can turn it back off, fully secure. Then we're ready to rock and roll, right? Then we're ready to call on our higher self and say, hey, I can pull down now safely into my creation space, either by myself or with my partner, or however we would wish to do this. I can call that higher blueprint in without it getting distorted, without me maybe misunderstanding it, or maybe it getting hijacked, or maybe me thinking a really amazing idea, but when I open my mouth, it comes out completely differently from what I was envisaging in my head. This is all the work that we do when we're detoxing. We need to cleanse the throat chakra, we need to cleanse the heart chakra, we need to cleanse the sacral chakra. All of them, each one is an important cog in the wheel. And so with this equinox energy that's coming up, we are getting prepared for that deep dive into the womb space, the void of winter, which is really when we do our dreaming work, so that when we come back spring and Imbolc and the snowdrops next year, we're clear, we've got all of our dreaming work done. Then when the energy shifts and the fire comes back in with the elemental energy, then the fire energy is the one that gives it sort of fans the flames of creation. And so we can work, as I know we have done before in the past, when we were doing workshops, is with the elemental spread of air, fire, water, and earth. That is the natural cycle. And so this equinox is giving us that balancing point in Libra before we go more into the darkness. Okay, you've had all of the light, you've had all the illumination you need. Are you ready now to go into your creation space and hold that inner space clearly, coherently, without fear? Or are you getting completely pulled out of that space, believing the narratives that are being beamed at us from all over the world, believing what your mate's telling you on a text message? Or are you saying, well, that's okay, you can hold that view, but that doesn't work for me, and you can stay there, and I'm not going to comment, I'm not going to get pulled in. It's easy to say, not always easy to do, but can we take that step back and say there must be a higher purpose to everything that's happening? I mean, there absolutely is, and that higher purpose is designed to show us that we are not sovereign and that we should be. And, I think that we're being shown with the equinox, the point that we can start to participate in that much more consciously. But as we progress towards Samhain or Halloween, we have a very, very powerful full moon eclipse happening on October the 28th, which is going to be a very strong culmination point of many of the unintegrated shadow aspects. So we are really being given our final chance to say, hey, have you done all of your shadow work? Have you cleansed? Have you shone the light into those places of your void, your inner void, and just checked, is there anything I should be worried about? Am I ready now to go deep diving from Samhain onwards? And in the Northern Hemisphere, the daylight shows us the descent into the darkness very succinctly, from getting dark at 11 o'clock at night to getting dark at like 3-4 o'clock in the afternoon. That's a rapid descent that we go through in the Northern Hemisphere at this time of year. And I think that that's a very good analogy of the energetics at work. And we can either resist that and say, I'm scared of Halloween, I'm scared of the monsters, I'm scared of the dark. Or we can say, you know what, the dark's my friend, because that's where I get to create my dreams. All I have to do is make sure that I've cleansed the field and got rid of those unhelpful baggages. So, you can look at it from that perspective.
And then also recognizing that if there's more to rise up, well, there will always be more things to rise up to a certain extent. It's like, okay, I can navigate this, I can hold it. And that's part of what it is to reclaim your power and be in your sovereign, is to be able to hold those things and navigate them. Yeah.
I would like a methodology or a map for life. And you're absolutely right. We can't just expect to do a little bit of inner work and suddenly we're all crystal clear, we're heading back to our multidimensional self overnight. It's like, that would be beautiful, but it also wouldn't be helping us that much. And I think that's really important to remember, that there is an evolutionary cycle that we are participating in, but most importantly, that we signed up for. Every single thing that is happening to us, each and every one, we all signed a soul contract to do before we came in. Now, there are many, many myriad of reasons why we did that, mostly karmically for each and every one of us, but we're also signing up to be part of a collective experiment. And the more that we can look at things through these filtrations and say, this is something that I agreed to participate in, rather than something that's happening to me that I don't like.
Absolutely.
Start to flip the question and say, well, why is this happening to me? Maybe there's a learning process here. Maybe for me to have a look and say, oh my God, like, why did that tooth have to come out? Well, why did that injury have to happen? Why am I not able to eat certain foods or addicted to others, etc., and use those, as you so beautifully said earlier, as our teachers. So we should never beat ourselves up for the fact that we've always seemingly got a bit more work to do. That will, in some point in our soul's journey, come to an end as we become more fifth dimensional and so on. And so we can inhabit a new earth world where our 3D and 4D are super comfortable, super aligned, and working with our 5D at all times. But in order for that to be a beautiful experience, it needs a few more of us on the planet to be doing it, because otherwise we're sort of somewhat butting heads with the part of the collective that isn't doing that, which is where we do need to be inclusive and say, hey, okay, you know, everybody's on their own journey. We're holding space for all of you. But at the same time, this is a collective process. So again, it comes back to, what am I doing to assist in that process? Well, I'm cleaning myself up. I'm becoming conscious and coherent of the entirety of myself.
Yeah, I love that. I love that as a final thought, because it just sort of highlights and reiterates the journey that we've all been on for the last couple of weeks, and how important it is, not only for ourselves but also collectively. It's like every time you take a journey like this and you go through a process of cleaning out and discerning and being on your eagle's perch, you're doing it for the collective. It's not just for yourself.
Yeah.
So Davyd, thank you so much for your time, and for taking the time to sort of, you know, be here and give us your thoughts on the upcoming equinox, and everything that you're doing in quantum plant healing. So if people want to find out more about quantum plant healing and all the beautiful immersions that you do and everything that's going on in your world at the moment, because there's one thing after the next, what is the best way for people to get in contact with you, and or to see what's happening in your world?
Well, maybe we can put some links in the show notes, but very quickly, we just actually created a really, I think, simplified page on our QPH quantumplанthealing.com website, which is the flow of the immersions, because it was very definitely a flow from one plant to the next, and then from you know, the plants to the journey to the Rainbow Bridge, and the quest to the quantum heart, and the return of the goddess. So we can put those down in those, but check out quantumplанthealing.com if you have liked this conversation. You know, me and Rebecca have done quite a few different talks for some of those immersions, along with other wonderful people like our friend and former teacher Pete Jackson Main, and Kelly Hunter, who I do the Moons and Mythos show with. So also would like to point to the YouTube channel, where hopefully I'll get to share this video too, where there are regular podcasts, some of which me and you've done before, the Food as Medicine show, which I think we're due to do another one of pretty soon, as well as the Moons and Mythos show, which is really you know, me trying to make sense in my own way of what the astrologers are telling us, whether it's Pam or Kelly. We're trying to bring it into a place of understanding it from the flow of energy, because really the astrology, whether it's our own natal chart or whether it's the mundane astrology of the moment, those are the blueprints and energy tracks that we can work with or understand ourselves better. So definitely would point towards that. Also would just like to point to quantumplanet.world, where we have a brand new course coming up with our wonderful previous teacher, Dr. Patrick Manaway, working with earth energies, which may be something that resonates, working with dragon energies, working with angelic energies. But also we have the wonderful Stellar Nations pathway, which is also working with astrology and understanding the archetypal energies that we chose to come in with. And whether you're a housewife, whether you're a YouTuber, whether you're a healer, a naturopath, we can start to understand what we naturally came in with. So we can much more quickly and easily become aligned with what it designed for ourselves, rather than chasing off down separate pathways, which can be fun, but sometimes then requires us to come back to center. So I just wanted to point to those things. Thank you.
Of course. Yeah, thank you so much. And I'll put those links, I'll put both of those links into the group, so that people can find you easily and see what's happening. Thank you again, Davyd. It's been such a delight to be back in touch and to have this chat this evening, and we will touch base again soon, no doubt.